I got the special edition / extended edition Blu Ray.
Yes, as did I.
Recently, it was my own. It was my little just Christmas present to myself. No wrapping, no nothing. I opened it up immediately when I got it, popped it in, and the first thing I wanted to see was the extended version because this is a version that I remember from television.
Yeah,
and it's for some reason supplanted my memory of the original cut because when I saw it the 40th anniversary when it was in theaters briefly, there were things that I remembered about the movie that were not in the movie, so it was obviously had to be something from that television version.
Yes.
Just a couple of additional things. Like I did not remember anything about a monster that Lex Luthor was keeping subterranean that had the sounds of what sounded like a wildcat or a cougar or something.
Yeah, I thought it was some sort of sea monster or something, but that
but
may
it
have
sounded
been
like
wow.
Wow.
It may have been like a temp track of like we'll use this, we'll just put something in
just
here.
Put something in.
But Lex, you can't do this to me. Why? Lex, why?
Because I love you, Miss Teschmacher.
Miss Teschmacher.
By the way, Miss Teschmacher, your mother sends her love.
It says right on the disc. This was a cut made by the producers. This does not actually show the director's intent or something like that.
There's a lot of stuff in there that just it looks a little clunky. It looks a little clunky.
Does.
It looks like it doesn't belong in there.
The music does. It's like either additional music. I don't know if it's John Williams music or if it's just they added music from something else because it's like completely different music all over a lot.
You know what?
The
Probably most likely Jerry Goldsmith. Jerry Goldsmith was like they would often like just open up old Jerry Goldsmith scores and just throw temporary music tracks.
He actually almost did the score, but he just wasn't available when they needed him. So that's when they got John Williams and thank goodness.
Yeah. And also, I mean, like John Williams has a certain currency to him, just the name back then, especially.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Like if you if you could get like $40 million from Warner Brothers just on the promise that Brando would be in your movie. Mm-hmm. John Williams, you say we get John Williams to do the music, and they'll be like, oh my God, take my money. Yeah. You know, I mean, it's just John Williams has had this gift where he hit this total, I don't know what it was. It was like this total, what do you call, Holy Trinity, I guess, of Jaws, Star Wars, and Superman. 3 of the most amazing scores ever, all within, I don't know what, 3 years.
Special mention to Close Encounters, of course, too.
Oh yeah, Close Encounters as well. That's a quadrilogy, holy quadrilogy. Mm-hmm. And then after that, I mean the '80s. I mean you had Indiana Jones. I mean just fantastic stuff. So, but anyway, with the TV version, I noticed this, and the thing is, we've been having this back and forth lately. My TV is just too good. Yeah, you have to be a certain disc. It only I guess matters with something like this particular disc because it's so grainy, and I feel like they didn't do any kind of cleanup work or any kind of remastering. And I'm just talking about this,
that they could, yeah.
This extended version. I feel like they just kind of ported it directly from the best version of it. This being the TV version would have to be, I would assume, not necessarily a negative or even a film print, but possibly some kind of tape. But I don't know. It wasn't a tape. It's just that you wouldn't go and create a fine negative just for a television broadcast.
Okay, here's what I think it is. I think they made it's almost like a theatrical print or something because it's the widescreen version. Now, of course, on TV it was like a pan and scan of that. So this is an actual film print. Yeah. That they found in the Warner Bros. lot. It's something like TV version or something on it. They were able to sort of, and they may have mixed and matched to get the best quality of like, okay, we'll take as much of the original version as we can so we can get a nice clean version of this movie, and then we'll try to clean up the added scenes and sort of integrate them in. They also do some interesting things where it seems like it's originally like a mono mix that they sort of enhance a little bit to give it kind of a stereo effect.
But that mono mix was atrocious. It was such a mess, and it was just completely like there are no separate elements of anything. No, it's like they just mixed it all up into this big muddy mess. I mean, it's legible. I mean, it's legible, but again,
it gets the job done.
The hiss is really high, and it's it feels like it was recorded. It feels like it was recorded with the first audio equipment ever made,
You
like
know what?
100 years ago.
I just realized it may be like kind of like when they would make like theatrical prints and they would put the sound on with that optical track, on the side of the film, and then that's what they would use, and they would have like Dolby stereo, and they would make it better. They put Dolby on it. It may be one of those sort of optical tracks from the film that they just sort of like took that and tried to clean that up. It's literally like just they found it in a canister at Warner Brothers. It was sitting right next to Bad Ronald and and other things.
Oh, it was also this Blu-ray is a Warner archive. It's not advertised as an archive on the box, but it is on the discs.
Interesting. Well, it is a stamped disc. It does look like an actual disc. I mean, it's not like a BDR.
Yeah, it's not a BDR, but Warner Archive is like much better than that
Hey,
other
look,
than
and how
Sony
much-
and stuff like that.
How much did that cost you? What you said?
It was
$15?
like
I
it was
think.
like $15
I bought
because
it too.
I got
it too. Yeah.
I got it right before. Well, let me see. Did I get it after? Yeah, I got it after Black Friday, but I got it before a certain.
I think it cost about the same. I think it was about $15 and change or something. And it's like we were talking about this earlier about how the value that you get from this, because you get basically the curiosity piece that is this cut, but then you also get the added to it, which I think is great. The 2001 sort of slightly extended edition, sort of approved by Richard.
Yeah,
Donner.
only slightly, but I think it stands as the definitive version of the movie.
But it's what
for me.
Richard Donner wanted to make, because remember, we talk about this of like movies get so rushed that they can't fine tune it.
Even though I think the Metropolis Cops is a really kind of a dumb idea. Because Krypton is about to become extinct and they're worried about arresting this guy.
Yeah.
It's like, we're going to put you in this jail until there's no more jail. It's just kind of dumb for me, but it's an interesting visual.
Yeah. That guy on the whatever he's he's just kind of going down thing. In watching this cut, I could see more of that guy that would actually end up being in Superman 2. Talking about like doing the tree poem, a guy that played Lobot.
Mm-hmm.
There it seems to be more of shots of him sort of with the Elders of Krypton. I'm like, oh, there he is. Now maybe I was just not paying attention. And I did notice that also had the original sort of very sloppily put together Warner Brothers logo, where it was like in a hurry, where it's in black and white, the sort of the roundish W.
Yeah.
And all these
they're
versions,
all like that. They were all
except
all three.
if you put in the digital code and you watch the streaming version, it's got some sort of like weird black and white Warner Brothers shield that looks almost like it could be a Batman movie kind of shield. And I'm like, I don't know what version that one is. I think that's the 4K version. It's just for some reason they put that shield on. I don't know what.
I have got to pop in my Warner clamshell and see what the logo is on that one. I'm willing to bet it's the red on the red background one. But
that might be the only. It's weird. That might be the only Warner Brothers film that I can think of that has that sort of interesting Warner Brothers logo that I can think of. There might have been. It literally may have been just for that movie, or it may have been at like a short period of time in like the late 70s Warner Brothers movies had that, but I don't think so.
Now, for the TV version, the only time you can really feel that this is like an extended version, I think, is the period after Jonathan Kent dies, and he finds the green crystal thingy, and he tells his mom he's going to leave, and then he goes on his trip to the Arctic or whatever, and it goes on for way too long. I mean, it's just way too long. It brings the movie to a standstill. But
filler.
Other than that, I mean, like everything kind of rolls together pretty well, even with the Goofy Monster and everything. Although there is a really awkward edit there where he saves Miss Tessmacher. That again, where we are
doesn't he
at
kind
that
of
point in the movie is just too much.
Now doesn't okay. Now I'm trying to figure out because I kind of just skimmed it a little. Where does that fit in the continuity of when he saves? Because he saves Miss Teschmacher's mom because he throws out the missile that's going to hit Hackensack.
Well, it's right after he saves the missile, comes back. Even though he shouldn't, he should be on his way to try and stop the other missile. But then he does his little thing. He rescues Miss Teschmacher, and then he takes off again. And then he heads toward California and Dead Lois.
Yeah,
so it's completely, it's not right. It's not right at all.
Yeah.
It's
Again, this is all stuff that they were like, hey, let's try this. So this might work. And then they edit it together. And this doesn't work. Take this out. Take this out.
It's twice the amount of commercials. I mean, that's a lot of money for Warner Brothers there. Now the special edition is a much, much greater improved version. It's a much cleaner image.
Yeah,
there's still grain, but there's nothing you can do about that. Like we talked about this, it's really hard to deal with grain. It comes from a film source, but it's being resolved through digital crystal technology, and so you're going to see that grain.
Yeah, you also have to remember that this is from like 2000, 2001. This is early. I mean, when this came out originally, it came out on DVD. It didn't actually come out on Blu Ray or HD until 5-6 years later. So this was whatever this transfer that they did was probably done in like 2000, 2001. That's like early HD, still trying to figure out the best way to do HD.
Yeah.
So it was probably like, if it's much like if you get that 4K version, it's cleaner, it's sharper, it's probably
you have problems with that when it comes to like certain movies shot in the 70s, like we talked about Close Encounters.
Yeah.
And we talked Superman and Star Wars too, because this was a trick that DPs used back then to create a hazy landscape.
Yeah.
They would put a Christian Dior stocking over the lens to give it this kind of really nostalgic look.
Wouldn't be like on Star Trek when they just put Vaseline on the camera when they would show women.
or on the lens or something like that. Now, I'm reminded because when they were doing the Blu Ray restoration of Star Wars for Blu Ray, they were trying to figure out how to simulate this particular look that they had on Tatooine during the introduction of Luke Skywalker and the droids being abducted by the Jawas. They were trying to figure out what the hell this look is they were using, and they were looking at all these different filters, trying to simulate that look for the Blu Ray. And finally, George Lucas happened to be in the office at the time, and they were like, "What did you do? How did you shoot this?" And he says, "Oh, we just used a pantyhose, and we put it over the lens." And then we're trying to figure out how the hell to simulate pantyhose.
Yeah,
the pantyhose look.
The interesting thing about doing the Star Wars like on Blu Ray, it was probably, I don't know if it was a 4K scan, may have been a 2K scan because this was HD a few years ago. I'm thinking, okay, this movie has been like double restored. They did the sort of the special editions in the 90s, and then that was like, because at that time like the film was starting to deteriorate, and they did basically like sort of a chemical restoration of the film.
Yeah.
Like at the time, so and then there are no versions of the original. I mean, we can get into like the despecialized editions. They basically had to Frankenstein something together because I don't even think they're in the Lucasfilm vaults of the actual like cut of they took all those extraneous bits that they cut out and made the special edition with.
All those destroyed them, throw them away. Rot. All those materials absolutely rot.
And so the only way you could probably do like a proper restoration of Star Wars now, like digitally, you probably have to find a theatrical print from the 70s, do like a 4K, maybe an 8K scan, and then meticulously try to recreate what a pristine copy of that would look like.
Yeah.
And
that's what our friends at the Despecialized Edition did. Yeah. They grabbed many different kinds of prints, many different sources.
Yeah, but I'm sure
they even did the visual effects cleanup. The only thing that George Lucas initially promised before he started making changes, all he promised was a nice digital cleanup. Yeah. So they did his job and left the movie alone.
And that's pretty much what they did with, like, go back to Superman. This is kind of what they did with that sort of like special edition where they basically they did the best version they could. They cleaned up a few things. We talked about like the weird sort of slightly green suit to work with the blue screen. They fixed that. They basically said, okay, we want to create the best version of this movie we can without making too many alterations. There was controversy about the sound mix, about, too many new sort of sounding sound effects. And this kind of goes to me watching.
But it was much cleaner, and it's not as much of a headache on your ears as that mono mix was, because the mono just jumbles everything together.
Yeah, I've just got a 4K Blu Ray player, so I was actually able to watch the 4K. I mean, I don't have a 4K TV, but it downgrades it to 1080p, so I can watch it. So I was able to watch that 4K. The great thing about that 4K disc is it has, as far as sound mixes go, it has a new up-to-down Dolby Atmos mix that sounds excellent. But then it also has the original 70 millimeter surround sound mix, and you can tell because, and I've talked about this before, it's kind of it's full 5.1 surround sound, but it's sort of mid-fi, and you can really tell. So it's like it's not quite as crappy as the TV cut, but it's good. It's stereo, it's surround, but it sounds very sort of mid-fi, and it has to do with them rushing the movie out, and that's what it sounded like in the 70s. So if you want like as close to what you might see in the 70s, get the 4K disc and listen to that 70 millimeter mix, because it's the original theatrical like length cut, which I actually think is fine. Like, it's good to watch that extended edition and then be like, okay, I see these extra scenes, I see how they've been, but then when you want to sit down and you just want to watch the movie, I prefer like the theatrical it flows better, it's faster. I mean, it's an extra 10 minutes, I think, ish, and it's like it's nice to see those scenes, but they don't necessarily add too much to the movie for me, except maybe there's that one scene when he's talking to Jor-El after he's done all his Superman stuff, and Jor-El basically said, "You are revealed to the world. You're
forbidden from eating cherry pie." Yes. Well, I've been saying that for the last 3 or 4 days, and it's been bugging the crap out of my wife. But I mentioned to you the other day that I don't think these movies are made for high def or Blu-ray. They're meant to be projected. That's their true intention. So when you look at like the newer stuff, like Last Jedi, I mentioned Last Jedi.
Yeah.
Last Jedi looks so good. It looks better than good. I mean, it looks incredibly lifelike. It's rich and colorful, and that's because it's made at a time, and it's made with a thought toward. I think when Superman was made, they weren't even yet thinking about, well, people are going to be watching this in their living rooms, and they're going to be, and then eventually the technology will improve to such a degree that people will have what amounts to a movie theater in their living rooms.
Well, also you got to remember, Last Jedi was actually shot on film.
But it was shot with, I mean, like film grains. I mean, they didn't. There was no grain. There's no grain in Last Jedi.
Well, see, also there's basically the filmmakers got together to save actual physical film, and so there's only like one company that makes film. It's either, I can't remember if it's Kodak or Fuji. It's probably Fuji, because I don't think Kodak is a company anymore.
No,
but it's like
Kodak.
There's like one film stock that they can use now, or something.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you create the faster the speed of the film, the more grain there is, but it lets in more light. The lower the speed of film, there's less grain, but you need more light. So they're using lower speed stocks with no grain or very little grain. Like I said, I saw no grain whatsoever in Last Jedi. And what's more, my Blu-ray of Last Jedi looks better than the projected movie that I saw. I paid $60 for.
I was lucky. I saw it in an Dolby Cinema. Actually, I saw it in two theaters. I saw it in a Dolby Cinema first, and then I saw it in IMAX 3D the second time. Now, I will say that the IMAX 3D, it's 3D, so it's sort of a more overwhelming experience. But the Dolby Cinema version that I saw was crisp, clear. The sound was awesome. I mean, they're meticulously put together theaters and projectors and everything. That was a very high quality presentation. Having said that, even if I compared it to say my plasma setup, I probably would enjoy watching it on my plasma setup better, because I can tweak it. I can make it exactly the way I want it. I have my lighting the way I want it. I'm up closer. It's smaller. If I ever get a 4K TV, I have the 4K player, so that'll probably look even better. That'll probably look better, way better than the theater. But that's, again, when they make these movies, they make them for the theater. at least in 1978. I mean, they weren't even thinking about video or anything.
Well, I think what needs to be done is probably something people are not going to agree with. I would say do everything in your power to remove grain now, because grain is not good. Grain doesn't look good on that.
Well, everything that's shot digital doesn't have grain unless they intentionally go. Most things are shot digital. They have crisp, clear
things,
pictures.
yes, and they said that it wasn't going to happen.
Sometimes they will intentionally make it look. They can have programs now that can make it look more film-like and film grain, because that can create an effect.
It does, but Last Jedi, for some reason, looks a lot like, like in certain shots, especially with some of the resolution with red and dealing with red. The color red used to be such a problem for video because it would create this glowing effect. But now, in something like this really new Blu Ray, it almost has a video effect to it.
Well, it helps that your TV is like a 4K HDR and is basically enhancing and can handle things better. So it could be
completely different. It can be now a completely different kind of media that's being used. Not film, not video, not digital, but now a new kind of, with these 5K cameras that they have and these 8K cameras, and they're probably going to go even higher than that.
Oh yeah. And
it's going to be overkill because film is supposed to be an illusion. It's not supposed to be. Film should have been the way Superman was shot. Superman was shot in this kind of dreamlike, hazy quality.
Well, also, see, that's part of why 24 frames is almost perfect for that kind of story. It almost creates a hypnotic effect. It's just enough frames for you to it's like it has enough spaces in it for your brain to fill in the blanks.
Yeah.
So it creates almost like a dreamlike effect. It's not quite reality, you know?
Yeah, it's not quite reality, but then we go the other way with Peter Jackson when he did his Hobbit movies. He shot in 48 frames. And
I saw one of them I think I saw two of them in that 48 frames.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't look any sharper to me, but it looked weird. There's like a couple of scenes when they're going down the barrels and everything, and I'm like, this looks weird. This looks like video, and yet it's not. Yet it looks like film.
I think what Jackson was going for was he wanted these incredible wide shots with all these visual effects and big things happening in the camera, and he wanted all of this clarity so that you could point out many different things that you would see in the image because of the 48 frames. I think that's what he was going for, but it created the added effect of driving people crazy.
It did. I was like, I want to see it. And now I'm like,
there were people complaining of horrible headaches. There were people, their eyes hurt. They felt like they were going mad looking at it.
It kind of created like what's called the soap opera effect. Well, with TVs where they do motion smoothing.
Yeah.
And it just makes everything move in a weird way that doesn't look. It just doesn't look.
Weird.
Maybe it's because
you look at Twilight Zone. When you look at the Twilight Zone on the Sci-Fi Channel,
and
it looks like video.
Now, it may just be because we're just used to seeing things in a certain frame rate and our brains are just used to it. Maybe a kid watches it and they're fine. Who knows? You may have seen the video of where Tom Cruise and Christopher McQuarrie, the director of the newest Mission Impossible, the new Mission Impossible, and
Chris McQuarrie directed the latest one?
Yeah.
Oh.
He's the last two, actually. And Great films, by the way. If you ever get
Chris McQuarrie is a fine writer. He did he wrote Usual Suspects. He wrote a bunch of movies for Bryan Singer. And they worked together.
These are two great movies. He's a great action director.
He directed an interesting movie. Oh, geez, what was it?
Way of the Gun.
Yeah, it was Way of the Gun. Is that the one with Brian Felipe?
Yes.
Brian Felipe and somebody else. Benicio, was he in that?
Benicio.
And Brian Felipe was doing this Al Pacino impression that was driving me nuts. But it was an okay movie. It was talking like this for some reason. They had him talking like this for the whole movie.
But basically what they do is they kind of like, hello, I am Tom Cruise and I am Christopher McQuarrie, and we'd like to talk to you about what is called motion smoothing or what is called soap opera effect, and we don't want you to turn that on your TV because it makes our movies look bad. So basically, I disagree with Tom Cruise on a lot of things, but on this I agree with him, because you put that on, it makes a movie look weird. A movie is shot at 24 frames. Even when they shoot them digital, they're shooting them at 24 frames digital.
Yeah.
It's supposed to have a specific look, and when you put that motion smoothing on, and it creates this weird effect that does not look right.
Oh yeah.
It bothers me.
we played around with 24 FPS back in the early days of digital when I was making movies. I was shot when we had the option finally. They gave us an option for 24 frames, and they gave us an option for 30 frames. 30 frames is more the video effect.
Yeah, it gives it more of a video look. Yeah.
Yeah, with the 24, really just beautiful. It did look really good, even on digital tape, stuff like that. But now everything is solid state drives. You've got 8K. You've got all kinds of stuff going on. Yeah. Just a couple of things that I wanted to mention about Superman. Little impressions that I had. I was, thinking about the destruction of Krypton, and then I'm thinking about the ever-present debate about the climate change and global warming. So.
All right.
So I'm thinking that the Krypton, which is run by a bunch of old men, apparently.
And there's a woman in there.
Old white men. There's a woman there, but she doesn't have a crest. Did you notice? I mean, like, everybody has, like, their own special crest.
I'll have to go back. I'll have to look at that. She seemed to be one of the elders to me.
She was. I think she was like Judge Ruth Bader Ginsburg or something. Like, she had a lot of power, but no standing. But it's all basically this whole thing of no, it's not global warming. It's just climate change. And meanwhile, the freaking sun is headed toward them, and they're going to explode and die. And then I thought about the trailer, where Jor-El sends his only son to save the Earth, which reminds us of the Bible.
Jesus.
Jesus Christi, yes. So Jesus is Superman. No.
Of course. Superman is Jesus. I mean, hell, it was written by two Jewish people. Jesus was a Jew. It's about, like, fitting in. It's about showing the way, leading by example, doing the right thing. That's Jesus.
And my wife asked me, because she asked me this question, now, is Clark's clumsiness, his awkwardness, is that an act? Did he have to study to be clumsy?
It depends.
Because if Clark Kent is the disguise, then the disguise must also incorporate a personality, and that personality comes off as awkward and clumsy, right?
Well, okay, let's go back. Let's go back to Jeff East at the beginning with his weird Christopher Reeve nose that they put on him when he's playing.
And Reeves' voice too. Reeves' voice.
And Reeves' voice, except go back to that like TV cut, the extra bits that they put in with him. It does not have Christopher Reeve's voice.
Yeah.
So if you can kind of go back and forth and
so they didn't have him come in to loop that.
Yeah. And so if you look at the way, I mean, you see very little of him in the beginning. He's almost like he's not the bumbling Clark Kent. I mean, he is Clark Kent, but he's not the bumbling Clark Kent. And he's more sort of the earnest Superman, but he's not like Superman with his powers and confident in his powers. But he's like he is sort of strong of character then, and he's certainly not a bumbler then. But he's also young, and maybe he doesn't know his powers. If you watch the newer Superman with Henry Cavill, he kind of flips it where it's like he's Clark Kent, but he's like confident Clark. He's kind of a douche Clark Kent.
He's dashing and debonair, and Brandon.
He's
Brown,
already but he's like he's burdened too. He's almost like burdened that he has to be Superman. Whereas in this, he is Superman, and he's like, okay, I'm going to pretend to be this bumbling idiot. I mean, and again, it goes back to the Christopher Reeve and his genius of how he played it and how he did it.
Yeah.
And they even kind of like, if you notice, like when he's Superman, he parts his hair one way, and when he's Clark Kent, he parts it in the other direction.
Yeah.
I guess it's like these weird sort of subtle things. In the weird sort of 70s Sally Jessy Raphael glasses that he has.
Yeah.
And it's like he's doing everything he can to just be this bumbling idiot, unassuming person. But in this, he's Kal-El. He is Superman, and he's pretending to be Clark Kent. Now there may be aspects of that in his personality, but he's very confident in who he is. He knows he's the shit, but he only does that when he's Superman. When he's Clark Kent, he dumbs it down.
My wife does point out a scene, I think, where right after Superman leaves Lois Lane's pad, and Clark comes in, and Lois has to just grab her purse. She leaves. Clark kind of looks at himself in the mirror and grins.
Well, yeah, it's because he's pretending to be Clark Kent, and then he realizes, and he almost like takes his glasses off, and he's like, and then he's like, no, okay, I got it. Never mind. And then he's Clark Kent pretending to be. He's Superman pretending to be Clark Kent is what he's doing, and he's like it hurts him to do it sometimes,
Well, yeah.
And of course, they get into that a little. They get into his sort of struggle with himself a little bit more in Superman 2, where he has to sort of take away his powers to like because he doesn't want to kill Lois with his super sperm.
That's God. I really there's a lot I like about Superman 2, but then there's like this total Hollywood bullshit that creeps into Superman 2 that I detest. But otherwise, it's a fine movie.
Well, who knows what we would have gotten if Richard Donner had done it? Maybe he'd done a little more subtle version of that.
Yeah.